Return, O Virgin Daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's House of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.
Welcome to Reunion Roadmap. This is Al McCarn, Executive Director, B'nai Yosef North America. Along with me, our Communications Director, Stefania Pappas. We have another show featuring interviews with folks we haven't talked with before, music you will enjoy, and Midrash, discussion of the scriptures with our elders, Barry Phillips and David Jones. But we're going to start with the story of, who is it you talked to, Stefania?
It is Glenn and Amanda Miller, who are from the state of Oregon, and they're down there in Rogue Valley, Oregon, and they're a very unique couple. You'll find that out, and they literally have this conviction to walk the land like our father Abraham did, and you'll hear that at the beginning of this interview.
Yes, and this is another one it's a big story. Now, you might think it kind of strange that we are splitting this interview up into three parts. It's a long interview, and we're doing that for what is essentially the story of a hiking expedition.
Yes.
Because you will find that Glenn and Amanda have hiked a good portion of the Israel National Trail. How they got to do that, what they did along the way, who they encountered, that's the fascinating part of the story, isn't it, Stefania?
Oh, yeah, and what they discuss, these people that they refer to as trail angels. And you'll see some of the different interactions they have with these trail angels and some of the things that they did for them. Extremely intriguing. Will keep your interest throughout the whole interview, and it will leave you saying at the end of this first one, you'll say, I can't wait to hear the rest of this and the next two,
You know what amazes me, and what I'd like to know when I finally meet Glenn and Amanda face to face, is how do they do it being older than we are?
Yes.
These are two people in their early 60s, and they have set out doing something that, many people younger than they are couldn't even begin to do. But they did it, and that's the story of the Miller's trip. So let's go on up to Rogue Valley and meet Glenn and Amanda.
Welcome to the interview portion of Reunion Roadmap. I'm Stefania Pappas, Communications Director for B'nai Yosef North America, and we are going to Rogue Valley, Oregon, to get to know some very adventurous people, a couple by the name of Glenn and Amanda Miller. Now, I met them in Israel, and I knew right away they're quite a unique couple, and I thought, you folks out there who are listening to Reunion Roadmap need to get a chance to know them. So tell us a little bit about yourselves, Glenn and Amanda.
We got married during Sukkot of 2008, the Funderburg Ranch in Northern California with a beautiful view of Mount Shasta. And so 9.5 years, we've been a unit in unity. Basar Achad, our rings say, what is it?
Genesis 2:24.
Genesis 2:24, but the two shall become one. I'm a barber, and so I talk to people, if I'm busy, I talk to people for about a half an hour each every day, and I've been involved in radio when I lived in Alaska. Alaska is where I first woke up. I didn't know I was an Ephraimite, but the Creator gave me a love for the Jewish people and a desire to go to Israel. And at 4:30 in the morning, early one morning, I woke up and I didn't hear a voice, but there was a thought going around and around and around and around my brain that said, this is at 4:30 in the morning, it said, Matthew 10:6, Matthew 10:6, Matthew 10:6, Matthew 10:6. And I'm like, I wonder what Matthew 10:6 is. And I heard, but I didn't obey. I tried to roll over and go back to sleep, to be honest. and I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about it so much. And so I got up after about 15 minutes and read Matthew 10:6, and it said, "Go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." And I thought, oh, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, those must be Jewish people that don't know the Messiah. And maybe I'm supposed to go to them and tell them about the Messiah. But that was about 1998. And it wasn't till I left Alaska in 2002 and moved down to Southern Oregon and Northern California area when I went to a congregation and met Amanda and her mother and her daughter and her daughter's kids. And I was like, wow, 4 generations of people that are all messianic. And that's pretty cool. And I didn't know about the house of Israel and the house of Judah. I just thought all Israel are Jews, and the land of Israel and the people of Israel are all Jews. And some of them made it back to the land and some didn't. And I always had this desire to help those Jews in the former Soviet Union get home, and if that were being persecuted, I had this love and desire to help them. When I met Amanda's family, Amanda's mother gave me a book from Batya Wooten, and I had never heard of Batya and Angus at that time. So I read this book and I started waking up right away then, but I'm really a slow learner, and Yahweh put it on my heart when I was in the wilderness of Alaska to love Jewish people and to desire to go to Israel. And that's what I had. And I was slow at waking up. It took other people, Ephraimites, to help me along to find out what that first message that he gave me when it said, "Go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel," what it really meant. I didn't know I was one of them.
Well, and when I first, my aunt gave us some information about the festivals. And it was around 1999. And I, kind of looked at it, but didn't really delve into it too much. Well, then there was an article in the paper saying, have you ever wondered about your Hebraic roots of Christianity? And then it was Avi Ben Mordecai was going to be speaking at this small school outside of Redding. So I called my mom and said, I think this is what, my aunt, which was my mom's sister, is talking about. So we, went to Avi's meeting, and then later we started going to this congregation, and then met Glenn and his daughter there too.
Yahweh, even when I didn't know what was going on, even way back in the 70s, it was in the mid 1970s when I was living in Sitka, Alaska, that I had a desire to know why the Palestinian Arabs and the Jews in Israel were fighting. So I started reading everything I could about that. Then I met a couple of Jewish guys that were gold miners, and I ended up gold mining with them in Alaska. They both spent their winters in Jerusalem and their summers at gold mining in Alaska. So I mined with those guys for a couple of gold mining seasons in the early 80s. And one of them gave me this that I've been wearing around my neck since 1983. It says, Yerushalayim Tishakak Yamini. It's Psalm 137:5. If I forget you, Jerusalem, may I lose the scale in my right arm. And so Yahweh's been guiding me through my life, even when I wasn't, I was doing my own thing. I wasn't looking for him, but he was always giving me a desire to know about his people, the land of Israel, and it's been a beautiful thing. And as I said, I'm a slow learner. Started in the mid 70s and early 80s and kept on going. And it wasn't until early 2000s that when I met Amanda that I realized I'm from the house of Israel. I am. Whoa. I felt like there must be something in my background that I thought I might have had some Jewish blood or something. And who knows? I don't know what tribe I'm from or anything, but it's been a good journey, and there's always something new coming along the way.
Now, I described you at the beginning, both of you, as being very adventurous. What did you do for your honeymoon when you first got married?
We got married during Sukkot. It was on Tishri 20, or Etonim 20, 20th day. which happened to be October 19th in 2008. We knew we wanted to go to Israel. In fact, we wanted to get married in Israel. We wanted to get married in Israel, but we couldn't find anybody that would marry us because nobody over there knew us. And we weren't Jewish or whatever reason. We ran into roadblocks, but we went to a conference in Portland called the Love for Israel Conference. Joe Funderburg said, "Why don't you get married at our ranch?" And we thanked him for the offer, but we really wanted to get married in Israel. So anyway, we ended up getting married on the ranch because there was a lot of roadblocks. But I have Alaska Airline mileage, and I called them up and asked them, told them we wanted to go to Israel. And so they said, okay, you can go through British Air and you're going to go on this date, when they had an open 2 available seats. When you use mileage, they tell you when you're going. When we went, it was 3 weeks to the day after we got married. We got married on a Sunday. This was a Sunday, 3 weeks later. And we didn't look at the Torah portion for the day we left right away. But when it came down to, when we were leaving, we looked up the Torah portion. And the Torah portion it was November 9th, was from Lech Lecha, which starts in Bereshit, Genesis 12:1. That's where Yahweh tells Avram, you go from your land, from your relatives, and from your father's house to the land I will show you, and I will make you a Goy Gadol, great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. We do pray that we can be a blessing to him and that he will use us for his purposes. Then it goes on to say, an often quoted scripture from Bereshit 12:3, I will bless those that bless you, and he who curses you, I will curse. So anyway, we were leaving the land of our fathers, the United States, on the day. I don't know if all of your listeners know that Torah Parsha, they're split up into sevenths. So there's actually a portion for each day of the week. And on Sunday, that was the portion where Yahweh's telling Avram to leave the land of his fathers, the day we were leaving the land of our fathers. And then we landed in England. We landed at Heathrow Airport, which ended up being the next day. And then we overnighted there. We got rid of our jet lag there and walked around. And then the following day, which would be the third day of Lech Lecha, when we're flying across the Mediterranean and we first see land, Tel Aviv and the ancient port of Yaffo, and we're looking all over and seeing the land of Israel for the first time together as a unit, because I had been to Israel 2 times before that. I had been there the year before, actually. So she went there 3 years in a row. So the Torah portion for that day was Yahweh telling Avram, this is the land I'm giving you and your descendants forever. Look the land over north, south, east, and towards the sea. And as we're passing over the Mediterranean, we're looking at all this land. And he says to all the land that you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever. Arise, walk the land, its length and breadth. As I've said, I'm a slow learner. I didn't realize when that was our Torah portion. It's not, we don't believe in coincidences. We knew it wasn't a coincidence. There was 366 days that year, and there was 365 chances that it wouldn't be that Torah portion for that daily portion, but it was. And we knew, we didn't believe in coincidences. We knew that there was meaning there, and we actually walked on part of a trail that goes from the Lebanese border all the way to the Red Sea. We walked on portions of that trail without even knowing that trail existed. We walked to the top of Mount Meron. It's the highest point on the Israel National Trail, which is a 1,000-kilometer trail, 637 miles. One end of it is on the Red Sea near Eilat. The other part of the trail, the other trailhead or end of the trail, depending on which way you go, is near the Lebanese border at Kibbutz Dan.
And so this past Pesach season, you went to the B'nai Yosef National Congress, and you kind of like continued your journey with your hike along this route. Is that correct?
What we actually had planned was to do the hike And then we found out, because Glenn is such a good planner, he plans a year in advance for any trip. And so we had planned to do the hike. And then when we found out B'nai Yosef was going to be during that time, we wanted to go, but we just thought, our purpose was to do this hike. And so that's how it happened. We actually did hike first, and then we contacted Ephraim and Ramona because we felt like Yahweh really did want us to be at the Congress too.
Okay.
And so we started out hiking first, and then
But it was a few years after we were on our honeymoon when the Torah portion said to arise and walk the land. It was a few years later that we read a book by Judith Goldblum Pex. She and her husband John Pex run a hostel in Eilat, and she wrote a book called Walk the Land. And as we were reading this book, and they're walking the Shvil Yisrael is the name of it. It means the Israel National Trail. And they walked it from the south to the north and wrote a book. And it was so interesting. And while we were reading it, all of a sudden I thought, I think Yahweh wants us to walk this trail. It took a few years, and it was while we were reading this book that we realized we're supposed to do this. We're Ephraimites, and we're supposed to get our feet on the land that he gave Avram's descendants, who became Abraham, forever. And we're supposed to, this is what he has in store for us. This is what he wants us. This is some part of our purpose. Gosh, it was 9 years later we finally started doing it. It was a lot tougher for 62 and a 64-year-old to accomplish. It's a lot of up and down, and we lost the trail 3 times on day 1. And it was hard. It was hard. It was hard to see the trail in places. There's trail markers, which are just slashes of paint. Sometimes they're worn out. Sometimes there's brush overgrowing on them. Sometimes there'll be a fence post. Sometimes the trail's a beautiful trail, like a dirt road where we can walk side by side and hold hands and talk. And then all of a sudden, half an hour later, we go, hey, it's been a half an hour since we saw a trail marker. What happened? We were talking too much, and we should have taken a left somewhere or a right. We missed it because we're on this beautiful road, just assuming that is the trail. But sometimes it veers off the nice wide road.
Yes. So how far have you gotten when you combined those 2 trips? Because obviously, I think you said you didn't really get a chance to complete it.
Yeah, we definitely didn't have enough time to complete it. And we knew we weren't going to be completing it in one fell swoop. But what was interesting, we didn't realize right away either, is one end of the trail is at Kibbutz Dan, which is just, I think a kilometer from Tel Dan, which is where Yahweh divorced the house of Israel, and the Assyrians took our forefathers, our ancestors, away from the land for committing idolatry. And we were an adulterous nation that were taken out by the Assyrians and went all over the world and forgot who we were. We were Lo Ami. And it was amazing too. I brought a little tiny pocket Bible with us, because we're backpacking, and
yes,
we want to pack light. So I brought a little pocket Bible. It was amazing. Almost every morning I'd open it up randomly to wherever it opened up to. And it happened over and over again that it would open up and talk about our adulterous ways as the house of Israel, and how he's going to restore us back to the land. And gosh, it was just really neat. We were in Tel Aviv, and then we were going to take the buses to Kibbutz Dan, where the trailhead is. Not many people start in the north that time of year. This is the end of winter when we left. It was March 12th. So that morning it was, I opened the Bible in Tel Aviv, and it was all Jeremiah 2, and it was talking about the house of Israel and all the bad things, and idolatry and all of that. The journey to Dan was almost an all-day journey just getting to Kiryat Shmona. When we got to Kiryat Shmona to the bus station, We found out the bus to Tel Don had just left. We missed it. And it was going to be 4 hours before the next bus. We thought, what are we going to do? It's going to be dark by the time we get there. Where were we going to camp? What are we going to do? We had a list of trail angels and cheap accommodations. I looked it up, found a lady named Roni, called her up, and she's really nice. And she said, I'll get back with you in a few minutes. She called back a few minutes later and said, there's a lady named Nikki that's in Kiryat Shmona, and she will come to the bus station and pick you up and take you to Kibbutz Dan. And we're like, great. And just a few minutes later, this smiling lady, the smile never left her face. She came, picked us up, and took us to Kibbutz Dan. I think it was about a half an hour drive. And took us on a tour, showed us where everything was in the kibbutz in her car, took us to her home, and she said, if we want to stay in the gymnasium, she said, or you can stay at our house. I have a spare bedroom.
And now the music of Mason Clover. This is We Want to Go Home from his album, The Isaiah 43 Project, available on MessianicMarketplace.com.
Gathered, the people are assembled in Jerusalem. For I am Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel. For I am your God, and you are my people. Will you call our names and gather us home? We want to go home. Will you call our names and gather us home? We want to go home. Bring forth my people from the east and the west. Bring forth my sons and daughters. Will you call our names and gather us home? We want to go home. We call our names and gather us home. We want to go home. We call our names and gather us home. We want to go home.
and welcome to the Reunion Roadmap Midrash. This is Barry Phillips, an elder with B'nai Yosef, along with my friend and fellow elder from Florida, David Jones. David, I hope you're having a good day and that things are well with you and your family.
It's a beautiful rainy day here in Florida.
Hey, there you go. David, we are post-spring feast at the time, and we are looking forward to the coming of the fall feast. Sometimes we can't hardly celebrate Pesach or Passover for thinking about Sukkot. And we go to yard sales and look through the flyers from Dick's Sporting Goods and Cabela's and Bass Pro, wherever we do our camping gear shopping, looking for sales on tents and camp items and that kind of thing, anticipating, planning. Our congregation has already figured out where we're going to be and what the cost and so forth is going to be, but we're not there yet. And even when we get to the spring feast, we have Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, and Yom Kippur, a day of fasting and atonement, before we can celebrate Sukkot. So while we're looking forward to this grand wrap-up of the feast day season in the fall, we're in the middle of a hot summer. It's already, It's not quite summer here. I think summer begins this week at the time of the recording, but we're not there yet. We're not in the fall yet. And so we have some hot days of endurance. So Shavuot was in recent memory, and we had this excited waving of challah and dancing and celebration. Is it the Eliyahu syndrome now, where we're laying under a bush and praying to die? We've slain the enemies of Elohim at Mount Carmel, and it's enough. Just take me now and let me die. Or is there something constructive that can be embraced? How do we endure the summer slump and remain effective and heightened and skilled, and our sword's sharp and our focus is intact? Do you get where I'm going at here? Help us, David. Tell us what we need to do.
This is great. I know at other places they have changing of seasons and everything, but in Florida you got two seasons, green and brown, and and they're both hot. And so when we get into the summer, I mean, hot's hot, but then you get hot, and people. I used to work outside, Barry. I was a contractor, and I used to bury phone lines, telephone cable, fiber optics, all that kind of stuff. And, when the summer came, especially in the heat of the day, you couldn't just stop working. You had a job to do, and it had to be finished. It had to be completed. And here's the thing. Here in Florida, in the summer, it rains all the time. And so you had to finish the job, and you had to get it done before the rains moved in. So you had to hustle. And boy, it made me think about this. It made me think of Israel. It made me think of the spies that were sent in. And I don't really like that word spies. I believe, I personally like to call them tourists.
Yes, I agree.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but the Hebrew word there is tour, was what they were sent to do, and to gather information about the land, take pictures, and bring back souvenirs. But here we are. We're in the summer months, and in this time, in this excitement of what we just came through, it's kind of like we get stuck in that time. We're looking back at what happened and what did, and it was good, and we're looking forward to what's coming, but we're not forsaking what's right in front of us right here, right now. And the Father has something for us right here. And it's my thought that as we just come through Shavuot, that during the summer time, these summer months, the Father wants us to walk in what we've been given in preparation for what's going to happen in the fall. Because when they were sent into the land to check it out, it says it was during the season of the first ripe grapes, which is June, early July, in that time frame. Guess what time we're in?
Just about that same time, huh?
Yeah. And so I think we have the same test. we look at the spring Moedim and how they relate to what I believe is Moshiach's first coming, and in the fall feast, it testify of his coming again. But we have this in between time where it's hot, and we get lethargic when it gets hot, and all we want to do is take some R&R. And when do people go on vacations, Barry? I mean, they want to rest and relax and do all this in the summer, but there's just as much work to be done in the summer as there is in the spring and in the fall.
Well, I agree, and let me offer something other here. I think may be helpful to us. I think when we received the outpouring of the Torah, the fresh giving of the Torah at Shavuot, we go back to Exodus, Shemot chapter 19 and 20, and we read those details, and we understand that the Torah needs to be freshly written on our heart, not just a stale document that the ink or the engraving has began to weather away. I've seen the headstones where it was chiseled. There was a definite something chiseled into the stone, but time and endurance and exposure to testing of the elements has worn that down to where it's no longer fresh. We need that fresh chiseling of the Torah into our heart. We need also the Acts 2 correlation where the Ruach HaKodesh comes and empowers that engraving of the Torah to become alive and fruitful and exciting again to us. Learning to walk in the Spirit is not to walk away from the effect of the Torah. It is to bring the Torah, as Yeshua described in Matthew 5, to its highest level. Not doing away, but fulfilling, bringing it to its ultimate degree. There is something, I think, a little hiddenness found for us here in Luke chapter 4, where the spies went in, the tourists went in for 40 days and up through the Negev and into the land. Yeshua likewise spent 40 days in a hot, barren, desolate area, fasting and being tested. But at the end of this endurance of 40 days fasting, wrestling with his flesh, wrestling with the temptations of Hasatan, it says that in verse 14, and Yeshua returned in the power of the Spirit to Galil, and news of him went throughout all the surrounding country. And so it is on the other side of the hot, barren summertime, by comparison, that Yeshua would have come out of that season filled with the Ruach. I think it's a challenge for us that can be met to see these interim days as a challenge to walk in the Spirit, learning afresh what it means to walk in giftedness, looking for opportunities to be used for healing, for prophecy, for power, for demonstrations of belief, etc. And just let the gifting of the Ruach propel us, can I use that word? Provoke us, push us, if necessary, through the summer, but seeking to be an effective summer. As I described earlier, not praying to die under a bush somewhere looking for some shade, but Yah, give me a season of effectiveness so that when the fall feast comes, that I'm not having to climb a ladder to try to get to them and be ready for them, that I'm already there.
I think that's a great way to put it, Barry. I think that when the 12 went into the land to check it all out, I believe if they would have stood in the word that they were given by the Ruach that they were given it, that they would have had a very different story. I mean, they all saw the same things. They all experienced the same things. It's my idea that when they went in the land, they did not eat manna; they ate the fruit of the land. And so literally, taste and see that the Lord is good. He's good. And they tasted the promise, and 10 of them walked away from it.
Yeah, I've always struggled. How can there be such a chasm between perspectives? How can 10 see the horror and the absolute worst perspective of the land, and two have a completely different perspective? And I think, we talk about the clues that when they went to Hebron, that it was there that Caleb prayed at the cave of the patriarchs. That's midrashic from the rabbis. I think it's good. I enjoy that perspective.
Right.
And that it was Moshe who had prayed over Yehoshua that kept those two men. So your prayer life has to be key, does it not? And we talked about this last week in our midrash, that prayer is not always formed sentences and very well expressed ideas. Sometimes it's just a groan and a cry out to him. And sometimes in summer, that's what you do. It's like, oh, y'all, get me through this. Help me survive.
when the heat gets turned on and you feel that, again, I don't know how this affects you, but when I was working outside, the heat just pulls your strength out of you. And you just get drained really quickly, but you've got to continue. You've got to persevere. There's a job to do. You have to get done. And I think it's that same tenacity that we need to have in our walk as well. Just because life circumstances gets difficult, or just because there are giants in the land, does not change the promise. It doesn't change the word that we were given. And when they came back, that said that there was a different spirit on Caleb and Joshua. Now we're talking about the Ruach, right? And so this is, I believe, what helped change their perspective. And I believe they were men of prayer. But it's still hard to fathom how 10 men could dishearten an entire nation.
Well, you mentioned the heat pulling it out of you. Recently I was doing some tree work, trimming up limbs and so forth off some trees where we gather, making room for more parking, and 90-degree plus heat, high humidity, and we only worked about an hour and a half, but I had to stop and get in the shade and replenish with some water. Replenishing the water, having a fresh intake of the water of the Ruach and the heat of the season and the heat of the endurance. I think one of our prayers, as we're talking about this, David, has to be, Yah, keep a fresh flow of your river and of your water into me. The washing of the water of the word, yes, but also a washing of the wells of refreshing, springing up in the dry places. We see the barren desert terrain of the Middle East in some parts. That's going to be a part of the coming kingdom. And we think, well, who's going to live in the desert sand? There's water under there.
Hey, Barry,
those waters are going to break for us.
Do you think that prayer, in essence, could be an oasis in comparison?
Yeah, I mean, it can lead us to that. I mean, prayer, you pray today doesn't all mean that it's fixed tomorrow. There's the endurance on the other side of the prayer, but it can lead us to an oasis, I think.
So I guess what we're talking about is there are times of refreshing, even though it's dry. They did get water in the wilderness, although they didn't always get it in their timing.
No, but Moshe went ahead to the rock, I think to Mount Sinai, and hit the rock, and water flowed back to where the people were, so that their entire journey was one that had a river of water running from the rock. From the riven side of Yeshua, there is a flow. Amen. Yeshua has endured and persevered and suffered to give us water, David. We have the opportunity. We just need to seize it.
Barry, looks like we're running out of time, but
again.
But I think I'm coming in with you, saying I pray that for whoever's listening, that just our prayers that even though the heat gets turned up and the time gets turned quickly, that we remain steadfast and receive that refreshing, those rivers of living water that the Father desires to pour into us.
Amen. Amen. So if you have questions, comments, please send them to reunionroadmap@benayjosephna.com. And thanks for listening in.
One of the rising young artists in the world of Hebraic music is Melody Joy. Now we present from her album Awakening, Out of the Wilderness, available on her website melodyjoyofficial.com.
Hello, this is Sophania Pappas, Communications Director for B'nai Yosef North America. With me is Al McCarn. We have just heard the Millers' first part of their interview. We've heard Melody Joy singing about Out of the Wilderness, and we heard the Midrash, the lazy, hazy days of summer. Sort of like this whole theme is like a wilderness, and how they are trekking in the desert and doing different things in the land of Israel. The Millers were. All of it seems to mesh together.
Well, it does mesh together. Along with our first musical offering from Mason Clover, We Want to Go Home. And I think you all might have heard in Glenn's explanation of how they got to Israel and why they started walking the land in the first place. It really speaks to this growing desire in our hearts to go home, to the promised land, the land promised to our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, if you're new to the Reunion Roadmap, if you're new to B'nai Yosef North America, you might be thinking, well, what, are you all Jewish people? No, we're not. We are Ephraimites. You know, we're the non-Jewish Israelites. We're part of the house of Joseph. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean the Jews are no longer Israel? No. The heart of Israel is the Jewish people, which we know from Scripture as the house of Judah. And they have already begun returning home. In fact, just in this year, as we are now recording, that's 2018, this is the 70th year, or we've just completed 70 years since the state of Israel was reborn, and that was God fulfilling his promises to our brethren of the house of Judah, and he's made just as clear promises to the non-Jewish portion, that northern kingdom of Israel, the house of Ephraim, or the house of Joseph, as it's called in Scripture. Guess what? That's us. How do we know it? Sophania, when someone asks you that question, how do you know you're an Israelite or you're a Hebrew? What do you tell them?
I think I really like what the whole statement, what the Millers said, and we pretty much do the same thing. And that's where we explain to them, did you know that there's a part of Israel that is non-Jewish, and explain to them the 10 tribes that people call lost weren't really lost at all. But the Father knew where they were, and in the last days, he's calling them back home. And people are from all over the world have this awareness and are beginning to understand who they are in their return. And what it does is it really literally intrigues a lot of people, and they get drawn in.
Yes, they do. And you heard in what Glenn and Amanda were sharing with us, and you'll hear again as we continue the second and third parts of the interview with them, that they'll meet all these Israelis who ask, are you Jewish or are you Christian? Well, we're Ephraimites. We're part of the 10 tribes. Ah, okay. And the awareness of that as it grows, it's really exciting to see where it grows. Sophania, I can tell you, when I was growing up in the church, all that we understood was that Jesus would come back and fix everything. We didn't really understand, because we didn't have a need to understand it or probe into it, of what it means to live in this millennial kingdom with the Messiah, son of David, as our ruler. And what are those promises that he made? Well, now we're beginning to understand. And what it's done for me, I don't know if it's done the same thing for you, but what it's done for me is to realize maybe I'm not going to see the fulfillment of all of this in my lifetime, but I know it is certainly going to happen. And maybe my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren will see it. And one of these days, the resurrection will happen, and we will all be there together. That gives me great hope, Sophania, even in the midst of trials, even with the certainties of, well, death comes to everyone at some point, so the Scripture says. But the story goes on, and the promises of God extend beyond that.
Yes.
Well, that brings us to the close of another program. As Barry and David said, we are in summer, and the tests of summer are upon us. As we are recording, we're looking to the end of the month of Sivan, and the month of Tammuz is coming. So stay faithful. Don't get lost in the wilderness. And may you have a blessed week. This is Al McCarn on behalf of Sophania Pappas and David Jones and Barry Phillips. Shavua Tov.
Thank you for joining us on the Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging house of Joseph here in North America.